Hi, my name is Dr. James Chestnut. I'm from Victoria, British Columbia, Canada, and I'm sitting here with Dr. Himwood, and I'm going to tell you about one of my favorite miracles. You're going to hear some beeping in the background. Don't be alarmed. It's just we're at the Parker Seminar in Las Vegas, and they're starting to move around and take down some of the displays. Anyway, it's very hard to pick one story for me, and I think it is probably for most practitioners. So the one I'm going to share with you today is one about a little girl. She was about 7 years old. In fact, she was 7 years old, which is incidentally the age of my daughter right now. And her mother came in to see me. They had just moved from another province in Canada, from Ontario to British Columbia. Her mother was a school teacher, and her mother came in to see me, and as I began to work with her mother, she would often bring her daughter with her. And I noticed that her daughter had, her daughter was very, very small for her age, very slight, just a beautiful little girl though, and just really fun, great, very gregarious young girl. And we often joked around together a lot. And I said to her mother, and she had very, very strange, it's almost curled up little hands. And I was noticing it, but I was sort of waiting to get a little bit closer to see if I was going to be told something about it, or, I didn't want to point it out, especially to the child. But eventually, her mother came in without her, and I said, I've noticed your daughter's hands, and she's very small. She's got a very anterior sort of way of posture, the way she carries herself. I really think you should bring your daughter in, and I'd like to check her. And the interesting thing was that I used to walk through a cemetery every day to and from my office, and it was my gratitude walk. Whenever I got into the cemetery, it was just automatic for me that I would, on the way to work, I'd think about the gratitude for what I was about to be able to do in practice, and when I would walk home, I think about the wonderful things that had occurred in practice each day. And I remember as I walked through the cemetery one day, I just had this inner voice say to me, you need to check that little girl. And I very often don't listen to that, at least before that anyway. I didn't always listen to that little voice. But for whatever reason, I just went in and I said it, spoke to her mother. I said, I need to see your daughter. And she said, well, we've tried chiropractic before. And I said, well, you may have tried chiropractic before, but not all chiropractors do the same thing. I don't know how long you went or who you saw, but I've had some training in pediatrics, etc. And this woman said, well, no, actually, my daughter went for months at a time. She gave me the doctor's name who her daughter had been seeing, and this person could out-adjust me and out-chiropractic me with his eyes closed. He was a long-standing practitioner with a big pediatric background. He was actually one of my mentors, believe it or not. And I thought to myself, well, that doesn't really sort of make any sense, that you didn't see any change at all. But nonetheless, why don't you let me check your little girl? And if I don't find anything, it's no charge. But if I do find something, there's just something telling me I need to see her. I want you to bring her. And she was still sort of hesitant. They didn't have a lot of money. I said, I'll tell you what, if we don't get a change, you don't pay. How's that sound? And she said, oh no, I can't ask you to do that. I said, you're not asking me to do that. I'm asking you to do it. She brings her little girl in. I check her little girl out. Her little girl has a lot of issues, especially in the upper cervical spine. I said, well, I know the chiropractor that you went to is an excellent chiropractor, so what I can tell you is there's some kind of stressor going on in your daughter's life that has caused her to get back into the state. And so we talked about a few things, and I really, it was a real sort of challenge for me, because I wasn't sure what I was going to say in terms of chiropractic, because they had really genuinely tried chiropractic. So I started thinking about it a little bit, and this is really when I had first started to develop my wellness concepts of eat well and move well and think well. And I thought to myself, well, if this little girl isn't eating and thinking and moving properly, there's no way that these adjustments are going to have the same effect. And so I remember sitting down with the daughter. I always gave the report to the child and let the mother listen in rather than give the report to the parent and let the child listen in. I always spoke to the child. And I remember asking this child about what her sort of eating patterns were, and some other things. And then eventually I found out that this little girl's diet was really, it was average, which meant it was terrible. It was full of sugar and dairy and wheat and all these other things. And so I remember saying to the little girl, I want to ask you something. And she said, what? I said, is it possible that on one day a week you could eat as much junk food as you can get into your body? If you get sick, that's even better. I really want you to eat as much junk food as you can. Of course, her mother was horrified, and the little girl was ecstatic, and she was very excited. She said, I can do it. I can do that anytime. And I said, good, unlimited. There's no restraints. She said, yes, I can do it. I said, but on the other 6 days, I want you to uh, remove wheat and sugar and dairy from your diet. She kind of says, oh, I don't know, can I do it? And I said to her mom, I can help you with the shopping, I help you with everything, but I want to try this. The background is that this little girl hadn't had a bowel movement without drugs since she was an infant. She had been on laxatives her whole life, and I'm sure that's what was doing stunting the growth and all these other things. So remember, this little girl had had full course of months of chiropractic care, had not had a bowel movement without a laxative since she was an infant. Within 6 weeks of adjusting this girl, clearly my adjustments were not as good as the previous doctor she had. I am absolutely certain of that. But with her eating this junk food only 1 day a week and removing the other stuff after 6 weeks, actually it was after about 4 weeks, I did the first course of care for 6, but after about 4 weeks, she started having normal bowel movements, and she's off all laxatives and never went back to requiring a laxative for years and years. I mean, I'm not in touch with her anymore. She's got a stroke patient. They've actually moved away. So plus she's probably a teenager now, so that'd be interesting actually to see her again. But she never ever required a laxative again. And so the great lesson for me and the miracle for me was twofold. It was interesting. I remember on her second or third visit, one of my patients baked organic cookies, and they were huge. They were about this big, and I brought her in a whole big bag of these cookies. And I said, do you think you can eat all of these in one day? And she said, I don't know, but I'm going to give it a try. Apparently she got through about 7 of them. But anyway, after all this happened, and it was, I mean, what you would call a miracle. Of course, it wasn't a miracle at all. It was just physiology. This girl her body was so busy dealing with these other stressors that it couldn't respond to the chiropractic care the same. So anyway, then one of the great lessons for me was that it taught me a huge lesson that about lifestyle and the importance of it. But the other thing that was really neat was the little girl came in probably, I'm guessing, I don't know, it'd be months later, and she came in for her adjustment. By now she was on a wellness schedule, and she said, her mom said, go ahead, tell him. And the little girl said, well, I just want you to know, I want to be a chiropractor. And I thought to myself, you know, my head swole and my chest was out, and I said, oh, that is so wonderful. And before her mother could stop her, she said, because all you have to do is joke around all day, you don't have to work. And her mom was horrified. I mean, she was just red-faced, and she was apologetic, and I said, are you kidding me? That is the greatest compliment I've ever had in my life, because what it means is that you see that I don't work, that I come into this office each day to do what I love, so I never have to work. And it taught me two great things. As we always do, we learn the greatest things that we learn are from children, and it taught me two things. The first one was that adjustment by itself is not going to overcome problems caused by lifestyle, and the second thing it taught me was that if you love what you do, people notice, and although adults might not say it, children certainly do. So I guess that's my miracle, and the reason it's one of my favorites is because it involves a little girl who's the same age as my daughter is now, and the other reason is because it really hit. It was a miracle for me, because all the things I'd been studying about and reading about, this little girl, when I added that lifestyle change to her, she confirmed so many things that I had been thinking about and not seeing in practice, but in a much more gradual way. So she got to have a miracle, and I got to have a miracle too. And that's my story. Thank you.